Andrew Yang has that new party, the Forward Party that he's looking to start up.
Which,
And
it's unclear what the purpose
yeah, it's
of it
very unclear kind
is.
of what the purpose is. Full disclosure, a very good friend of mine is actually interviewing with Andrew Yang tomorrow. So by the time a lot of you hear this, it'll be today, to work for him. But look, I mean, the thing about Yang is just like his political decision making does not necessarily inspire confidence. Being that he really shit the bed on that mayor's run where he was like the odds-on favorite to win, and then just like completely imploded. But on the other hand, like the people, like I've seen a lot of people mocking the like Matthew McConaughey run, mocking the Yang thing. It's like, all right, but like, what's your fucking plan? Like,
That's
what's
it.
your
That's
strategy?
it.
Like, at least
That's
these
it.
guys are out there trying. You know what I mean? Like, what the
Well,
fuck are you doing that's working?
well,
What do you say? We need to keep electing more progressives after
that's
this
what they
Build Back
say.
Better thing? I mean, how
Yeah.
could you possibly say that with a straight face after this Build Back Better thing?
I'm in the middle of it with somebody right now because I've been getting a lot of that on our reprint of my progressives joining the Republican Party article, which, okay, this is part of why I just can't even be with the left anymore. Like, it seems to attract every fucking on the spectrum person with no sense of humor or sense of irony in the country, the left today. Like, within that article itself, I express a deep skepticism that it would work. The
Yes, and it's
lead,
written with a sense of humor, obviously. Yeah.
right? The lead of the article, which you're burying, what I stand by, is not that we should join the Republican Party or that I think that's really workable. The lead is the Democrats are fucking doomed. So you have to that's the analysis I do of what the state of the Democrats is and what their future is. I stand by all of that. And interestingly, nobody has challenged any of the logic. Like the premise, the basic, hey, the brand is toxic. They're going to get wiped out in 2022. You're not going to be able to get anything passed with this party. The working classes in the GOP, the people who are left in the Democrats don't really have an interest in reform. Nobody has taken on any of those points.
Right.
Nobody who's argued with it has been able to challenge a single premise. So I'm saying, listen, yeah, I don't really think that joining the Republican Party is a workable solution. I don't think reforming the Democrats is either.
Right. And that's kind of
The only
reflected.
thing you can say is you need to yellow vest that shit, shut the country down, stop the machines. That's a political project I can get behind. But you ask me after this Build Back Better shit, the way they fucking bent over and took that fucking infrastructure bill on a fucking vague whisper of a promise that Manchin's not going to dick you over further when they get to the Senate. I'm done. You can't tell me, oh yeah, no, you know what you need to do? You need to elect more Ocasio-Cortezes, and then we're gonna get it fixed. Because look, elect 2 more Democrats, they're going to come up with 4 more neoliberals to block any legislation to try to pass. Get 6, they'll have 8,
Of
because
course.
they have a whole backbench that just isn't saying it because they don't need to, because they have Manchin and Cinema. If they
Yeah.
needed more, you'd have 4 more of them come off the bench and block the legislation.
As far as the House math is concerned this time, you already had enough House Democrats to hold up the bill if they didn't cave. Even after Pelosi went out and got 13 Republicans to sign on to it, which is what I suspected might happen. I suspected she might try to just pull a fast one on them by getting a handful of GOPers to sign on to cancel out the progressive defectors. Even having done that, they still had enough to block it if they stuck together. I mean, Jayapal said she had 40, 50 people. Right. And so it's a fucking joke. I mean, it's obviously just a fucking joke. And the headline of your article is not "we must join the Republican Party." The headline is why it's not as crazy as you think to do it. So the whole setup is that this is just like, hey, stick with me here. This is just a little kind of thought experiment that we're going to have out. But David Pakman, who I believe, I don't like to badmouth other hosts. And it's not that David Pakman is a bad guy necessarily. I just find him incredibly boring. Like David Pakman is the dullest. like progressive YouTuber in the short history of progressive YouTubers. I mean, that guy is fucking boring as hell. He had Andrew Yang on, and if I thought of this earlier, I would have queued this up. But he fucking has Andrew Yang on and sandbags him with this question about how, well, I shouldn't say he sandbags him because it was actually kind of an easy question for Yang to just bat away, but he didn't, which again speaks to a lot of like troubling instincts that Yang has just as like a fucking incompetent political actor. But Pakman asked him something like, so if white supremacists try to join your party because they share certain ideas with you, would you welcome them in or would you kick them out? And Yang gave this answer. He's like, yeah, he says, if you're on board with some of our ideas, I'm not really going to ask like what your other policies are, which is a stupid fucking answer because of course you have to say, especially on a progressive show, you have to say, of course, white supremacists are now welcome in the party. That's what you could say if you wanted to give.
That wasn't a bad Yang, actually.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I usually do the voices.
When I think about people who believe Donald Trump won the election, vaccines, the COVID vaccine magnetizes you, causes autism, whatever the case may be, etc. Right? You know the package of ideas that I'm talking about. One, are those people that would even conceivably say this forward party idea that Andrew Yang proposes in a coalition with the left makes sense? And number two, are these even people that you want as part of your coalition?
First, let me say, I want everyone as part of the coalition. You know, if you can vote, we can disagree on a lot of things. It's all to the good. If we agree on the fact that this duopoly is not working, it's designed to turn us against each other and sink us. So that's one of the principles of the Forward Party is that, look, I can disagree with you on a lot of stuff, but if we can make common cause on this, then we can go back to disagreeing when the democracy is actually set up to succeed, when they're, you know.
So let me ask, so even, to make it really specific, if people on the right say the Republican Party is too centrist, I'm an extreme white supremacist or something like that, but I think we need to get, we need single transferable vote or whatever and campaign. You still welcome that because you're on the same page on that one issue?
Yeah, if they're going to help us transition to a more effective democracy, I don't need to know what their stance is on things that I disagree with. People have a sense of where I'm coming from.
Okay.
But right now, I believe that there is an existential threat to the country as a result of the greatest design flaw in the history of the world. That is, and if you will help us resolve that design flaw, then we can have a discussion about anything else under the sun. At a time when the democracy actually will stand the test of time, when we transition to a multi-party system where you can't make any autocratic or authoritarian decisions, you have to somehow get 2 or 3 other parties on board.
Of course, you should always say that white supremacists are not welcome in your movement. But what I would have told him, I would have just told him to go fuck himself. I would have turned off the fucking camera there. Like you shared a Greenwald article about how all of a sudden the left is using this specter of white supremacy to define everything it doesn't like, which of course has a like boy who cried wolf effect when a real white supremacist threat comes around. But also it's just like it's so cheap and shallow and meaningless. Like what a like if I were Yang, I would have just told him to go fuck yourself. Like what a ridiculous question. Like what world are you guys living in where there's like white supremacists lurking around every corner, willing to with a clipboard, wanting to sign up for Andrew Yang's new party? Like really? There's a large cohort of like neo-Nazis who are looking for a third party to join. And how about Andrew Yang, Democratic candidate for mayor in New York? You know what I mean? Like it's just become this insanity.
Well, yeah, because if there's one thing that white supremacists love, it's Asians.
Right. Well, no, the reason they get this is because a lot of Yang supporters in the Democratic primary were kind of swing voters because his whole mantra was not left, not right, forward. Mm-hmm. So there was a like contingent of like Yang or Trump voters. It was obviously a very small contingent, but there was, right? But that doesn't mean that there was like those people were not Nazis. Those weren't the Nazi Trump supporters. The Nazi Trump supporters were like Trump or we write in David Duke, not Trump or
Right.
Andrew Yang. Like, it's a
Yeah.
ridiculous question, but there's such an obsession with this now. And it plays into the idea that, like, the greatest threat to the country right now are like revolutionary white supremacists. That's what the January 6th, brouhaha is all about. And it's like, so much of the left has become so obsessed with this to the point where you're grilling Andrew Yang about white supremacists infiltrating his party. What a ridiculous question. And this is the guy who at the end of the day will always tell you, no matter what, no matter how much he he's one of the Uyghur and Cedar types who, like, at the end of the day, you got to vote blue, right? At the end of the day, blue is better than red. And so, like, what the fuck are you guys doing? Like, what are you accomplishing? What do you have to point to? What do you have to actually rally people to support your political movement? You got nothing. And so this guy's out trying. And look, I don't have that much confidence in it because I don't have much faith that, Andrew Yang is a very skilled operative. But he's trying. I give him credit for fucking trying. More than fucking David Pakman is doing. More than AOC is doing. Right? I mean, he's trying.
David Pakman, I mean, I don't know this host. But that kind of
looks
thing
like mayonnaise smeared on white bread. That's how I would describe David Pakman.
It's this is the framing of the media. I mean,
he is like a young Tom Hartman. David Ruiz described him very, very well. Without the Zionist shilling. I don't follow Hartman that closely, but yes, Pakman is like a young Hartman, skinny, kind of takes himself very seriously, very boring. Yeah, absolutely. Academic type.
This is part of how the corporate media is tearing us apart as a country. I mean, if you look at polling, if you look at any reasonable data, the country's gotten less and less and less racist and less divided over time. I mean, that's obvious. Look, when I was going to high school, I didn't grow up in like the boonies or anything, but there was like a blonde, blue-eyed white girl dating an African American kid, and there was discomfort. Like, I didn't grow up in Alabama. Like, it's not like people bothered them or said anything, but it was like a thing when they walked down the hall of school. Like, it was a thing. I don't think that would be true today. Like, I don't get the impression that that's really what it would be, especially in a New York high school today. So to present this world where, yeah, no, man, it's things have not changed in 200 years or even in 20 years or even in 10 years. Like there's no forward momentum. There's nothing, which is not to say to minimize that there is, I agree, there's structural racism, there's institutional racism, certainly in the justice system. But is really the way to address that to cast half the country as white supremacists? Listen, I spent my Thanksgiving almost entirely with Trump supporters. And guess what? Very few of them were white. One of them was white. None of the rest of them were white. And they all voted for Trump. Okay, it's complicated. It's not as simple as making out white supremacists. A lot of this stuff is the class signaling of Democrats doesn't appeal to a lot of these people. And guess what? A lot of the cultural stances of Democrats do not appeal to working class people of color. It's not, they want to cast this world of like heteronormative white people and everybody else. And it's not like that. There is a lot of division among different groups, and there's a lot of commonality among working class people, I find, of all races on a lot of cultural questions. So to say, oh, all the Trump supporters are racist, I met a lot of people who like Trump in Harlem. When he was running the first time, I had a lot of African Americans when I was campaigning for Bernie telling me that they were into Trump, that they liked Trump. Are they white supremacists?
Well, the data bears that out. Like, I mean, I made this point on the little post that I put up in response to a lot of the feedback that we got, and I think I made it in a recent Patreon thing that we did. But like, as the Democrats and liberals and leftists all double, triple, and quadruple down on branding the GOP this engine of white supremacy, the GOP base gets more and more diverse, and the Democrat base gets whiter and whiter. I mean, that is a fact. If you look at the data over the Trump years, Democrats' base got whiter, and the Republican base got more diverse. Glenn Youngkin won the Latino vote outright in Virginia. He
Also,
got 13% of the African American vote, which is more than double.
Mass incarceration. So shut the fuck up. What are you even talking about? I had somebody say to me, well, you know, you're bringing up things about Biden from the past, but you can't say things aren't better for people of color than they were under Trump. I said, yeah, I can. Tell me what Biden did for people of color. Please tell me. Because Trump was the first person to sign legislation undoing some of the current president's crime bill.
Right.
So I'm not saying, no, well, Trump was a great friend to the black man, but I'm saying the Democrats are not either. So what the fuck are you talking about? Like, how are you talking so much? Oh, Trump, white supremacist. You elected the guy who bragged that his crime bill would hang people for everything but jaywalking.
Yeah, but jaywalking.
That was your president that you elected.
Referred to black people as sons of bitches. I say lock the sons of bitches up. Who do you think he was talking to? That's an old trope.
There's a guy who said if we integrate schools, our children are going to grow up in a racial jungle that is going to explode at some point. That's who you elected. Look, Joe Biden, you cannot argue. Joe Biden has done incalculably more harm to the black community than Trump ever dreamed of doing. So what the fuck are you talking about? Everyone who voted for Trump is a white supremacist. You could better make the case that everyone who voted for Joe Biden is a white supremacist based on actual harm to people of color that those two men have respectively done.
Sure, but they don't pay attention to actual harm. It's all about rhetoric to them because politics is all about rhetoric. And so,
it's all West Wing.
Thank you, everybody, for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please subscribe wherever you saw it, on YouTube, on Rumble, or on Facebook. We have channels on all three of those platforms. Also, consider helping us create more content by becoming a member at patreon.com/do-dissidents or on Facebook, where you can become a supporter right through our Facebook page and get bonus content every week, as well as call-in access to our live stream shows. Thank you very much for your continued support.